To order. Supervisor Wells, would you lead us in an invocation?
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we ask your guidance this evening as we meet again to do the best we can to take our county and our nation in the right direction. We ask your guidance and direction for the people that we serve. We ask your love and blessings on everyone, our military, our leaders in national government and state government. God, we depend on you so much, and we ask all of these things in your name. Please be with us on a daily basis and keep your hand on our shoulder. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Vice Chairman DeHaven, you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Stand face the flag for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adoption of the agenda, Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are no additions.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
A motion by Supervisor DeHaven. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Hess. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The agenda is adopted. Next, the consent agenda. Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd offer the following tabs. Tab G, resolution regarding the Middletown Lord Fairfax Sewer and Water Service Area and Reliance Road Area Land Use Plan. Tab H, resolution for authorization to participate in Agua Virginia, Inc. rate increase case. Tab J, Parks and Recreation Commission report. Tab K, Joint Code and Ordinance and Public Safety Committee report. Tab L, Human Resources Committee report. Tab M, Transportation Committee report.
Questions? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Supervisor Hess. A second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Lofton. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The consent agenda is approved. Next is citizen comments. Mr. Riley, did anyone sign up?
No, sir.
We'll move on to Board of Supervisors comments. Are there any? Hearing none, we'll move on to the minutes of the regular meeting of October the 8th, 2014.
Mr. Chairman, move for approval as submitted.
A motion by Supervisor DeHaven to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Fisher. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The minutes of the regular meeting October 8th, 2014 are approved. Next is a special presentation. Vice Chairman DeHaven, if you'll join me. Barbara Johnson, come forward.
Cameraman says leave it on this hill for 5 minutes after the meeting.
The Employee of the Month Award Program recognizes the county's employees as an important and valuable resource. On behalf of the Board of Supervisors, it is my pleasure to present Barbara Johnson for consideration as Employee of the Month for October 2014. Barbara serves in the Fire and Rescue Department and is being recognized for her compassion, drive, and organizational skills that are beyond compare. She will tackle any task put in her path. She is responsible for leading all the research for improving storage, reporting, and daily administrative operations through Laserfish. Barbara is not only an asset to the Fire Marshal's Division of Fire and Rescue, but receives nothing but praises from other departments in the public. I'll now entertain a motion to approve Barbara Johnson as Employee of the Month for October 2014.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Supervisor Hess, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Lofton. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Barbara Johnson is hereby recognized as Frederick County's Employee of the Month for October 2014. The Board of Supervisors extends its gratitude to Barbara for her outstanding performance, dedicated service, and wishes her continued success in future endeavors. Next, committee appointments. Looks like we have a lot of seats to fill. Mr. Riley, if you'll help me, who we have applications here for?
I believe we have applications for the Extension Leadership Council.
Okay, then we'll wait a bit to get to that. Are we ready yet for Board of Zoning Appeals?
No, sir.
Lord Fairfax Community College,
That is a board appointment.
pardon me?
That is a board appointment.
Yes. I think that probably caught all of us off guard except for the agenda, so we'll need to work on that. So
Yes, sir.
if we could be so fortunate as to have multiple candidates, if you'd let Mr. Riley's office know, then we'll figure out what to do. Otherwise, we'll see where we go here. Extension Leadership, that's the one you have, Mr. Riley?
I believe Mr. Wells has a recommendation.
I do, Mr. Chairman. I would like to put the name of Raymond P. Cross before the board to fill this position. I've spoken to Mr. Cross, and he's willing to take on the duties and responsibilities, and I'd like to have a motion to accept him and put him on the Leadership Council.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Fisher. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no. William H. Grimm is appointed to the Extension Leadership Council. We have a member-at-large vacancy, and I'd like to find a good person, so I believe that one will be mine. So if you all will keep your eyes open, we'll see what we come up with. You don't have, she also made reference to the fact she was going to look, did she not?
She did.
Okay, well, she might do a better job than me. Historic Resources Advisory Board, Redbud, are we ready?
No, sir.
Back Creek, are we ready?
No, sir.
Board of Equalization, we have someone who's passed away and someone who would like to step down, and we have an application. I'm not sure who brought the application forward for Ms. Brumback.
We worked with the Commissioner of Revenue's office on some recommendations, and Betsy Brumback applied to replace Mr. Brumback.
All right, what's the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we appoint Betsy Broomback to the Board of Equalization.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Supervisor Wells. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Then we will forward that to the circuit court judge, correct? And we're still looking for a second person, right, Mr. Riley?
Yes, sir, we are. We're working with the Commissioner's office. We've recommended a couple of folks, but I don't believe we've heard back from them yet.
It's an important position, so I wish you good luck. I believe that's it. Next is a request from the Frederick County School Board for approval to sell the Robinson School property and apply the sale proceeds to existing school construction debt. Mr. Riley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe this is self-explanatory. The school board has declared this property surplus and is requesting permission to sell the school property and apply the sale proceeds to the existing school construction debt. I believe the superintendent of schools is here if you have any questions, but it's ready for action.
Questions of Mr. Riley or school board?
Just one.
Supervisor Dave?
You said existing school debt, and then it says future school debt in our agenda.
Your agenda is correct. We must have misspoke on the agenda sheet.
Thank you.
Well, I must admit, I saw the request fairly late in the review of the agenda. It probably would have been my preference that the county would have sold the property and probably have utilized this new EDA to do so. So part of it's good and part of it's not where I'd like to be, but what's the rest of the board think?
Mr. Chairman, I would agree. I think it's a good use of money to put it toward future school debt, but I also think this would be a good project for the newly formed EDA to kind of get their feet wet and see where their leadership would take us in areas like this for future reference.
Anyone else?
I would agree, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Riley, the mechanics of that would be what?
Well, the school board has declared it surplus by action, and it's before this body to to take the appropriate action. And if the action is I believe, and Mr. Williams can correct me if I'm wrong, it would be to amend the request to have the Board of Supervisors dispose of the property and have the proceeds go to where you designate them.
Now, you generally have a public hearing on the disposal of public property. EDAs have public hearings, or do it have to be the board? Or you have to research?
It would have to be conveyed from the schools to the Board of Supervisors for the county, but I don't see a reason why the board could not convey it to the EDA, and then the EDA would make the disposition. And I don't think it has quite the same requirements.
Okay, if somebody'd like to take a shot at a motion, we'll perfect it.
There is for EDA, and there isn't for us to send.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we have this surplus property transferred to the board for the board's disposition to the IDA.
EDA.
EDA, I'm sorry.
Mr. Williams, will that make muster?
I believe so.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second that, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Lofton. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Collins.
it's currently owned by the school board, is that correct?
Correct.
And so the school board had a public hearing, at which point they passed a resolution authorizing the school board to present it to us to give them permission to sell the property. And we're now making a motion taking the property from the school board to give it to the EDA for them to sell. Is that my understanding of,
I think there's one
am I
point
missing a
that
step?
everybody needs to understand. When the board purchases property, they need to hold a public hearing. When the bodies dispose of property, as far as surplus, there is no public hearing required.
It's the other way around.
It's totally the other way.
I didn't hear you.
Okay.
It's the other way around.
Go ahead. I'm
Sorry.
going to quit practicing.
No, I'm sorry. No, acquisition does not require a public hearing, disposal does, but if it's disposed to, if the disposition's to the EDA, it would not require a public hearing.
well, my question, I understand that point, but what I'm seeing here from the school board is the school board has asked us for permission for us to give them permission to sell their surplus property. And instead, we're turning that around saying, we're going to reread this resolution to say the school board has now given us the property, at which point we're not going to give it to the EDA.
Well,
That's my concern.
I don't want to play lawyer either, but I think when the school board declares surplus, it comes to us unless we let them keep it.
Okay.
That's correct.
Then I feel very comfortable in the motion, and I would support that.
Let me make sure I understand. So in other words, the piece of property, Robinson School, is now being declared by the school board. And once that happens, once that's accepted, then it's up to the county to dispose of the property.
Correct, except that the county can consent to the school board consenting. That's what the school board asked, and board has suggested an alternative.
The second part of that would be that, the second part would be the money that comes out of the sale of the property would go to debt of the county school system. And are we saying that that's not what's going to happen? We don't know exactly what's going to happen with the money at this point?
That would be the intent of the motion, I believe.
Yes, sir. We'd want the EDA's input on that, I believe.
I would just personally, I would like to see us continue along the line that it's county property, it's county business, county school system. I'd like to see that money dispersed in to help offset county debt through this county school system, so that we're not carrying all the debt that we have now. It just seems like we're going around Robin Hood's barn the other way. But that's just me.
Discussion?
I'd just like to indicate that I concur with Supervisor Wells' remarks.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's an interesting thing you bring up about the EDA, and might be something interesting to try here. And Mr. Wells is right, it's county money, one way or the other. So I would support the motion.
Other discussion?
Is the motion, the way it stands, then, there is nothing that binds the proceeds of the sale to retiring school debt?
That was my understanding of the motion, yes. Other questions? Do we need a restate of the motion before we vote? No? Okay. Supervisor Hess.
No.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Oh,
Chair votes aye and the motion passes. Next is a resolution of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Frederick on the issuance of up to $55 million of revenue bonds. Mr. Riley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a resolution that is before the Board of Supervisors for the County of Frederick to consent to the action of the Economic Development Authority of the City of Winchester on the issuance of $55 million in revenue bonds for the benefit of Westminster Canterbury at Winchester Incorporated. I believe EDA Council is here if you have any questions. And again, it was approved by Winchester City Council and the Economic Development Authority.
Questions of Mr. Riley or the EDA's counsel? Mr. Riley, I have just one for you. It's fairly well known that we anticipate looking at the tax exemptness of the entity. Passage of approval of the resolution for the borrowing does not impact that in any way or give a message that we will not be doing that?
It does not.
Okay. Any other questions for either party? If not, we entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the resolution.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Fisher. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Next is a resolution of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Frederick on the issuance of up to $70 million of revenue bonds by the Frederick County Economic Development Authority for the Village at Orchard Ridge. Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a resolution to request approval of the Board of Supervisors of Frederick County, Virginia, for the issuance of up to $70 million of revenue bonds by the Frederick County Economic Development Authority for the Village at Orchard Ridge. The Frederick County Economic Development Authority duly held a public hearing the beginning of this month, and the executive director of Lutheran Home, Inc. was present to make a presentation to the Economic Development Authority. And once the presentation was concluded, the public hearing was held, and public hearing closed, and the resolution passed unanimously to issue up to $70 million of revenue bonds.
Questions of Mr. Riley? I assume there's a representative here from Village at Orchard Ridge as well.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if there's any questions for them. If not, Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval.
We have a motion to approve by Supervisor DeHaven. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Hess. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The resolution passes. Next is a request from the Commissioner of Revenue for refunds. Mr. Riley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are three requests presented by the Commissioner. The first is a request for refund from ST Beach Spa LLC. The county attorney notes that he is in receipt of the Commissioner's request dated October 15th, 2014, to authorize the treasurer to refund ST Beach Spa LLC the amount of $2,670.36 for the adjustment to business license taxes for tax year 2014. This refund is a result of the business reorganizing to another name and identification number. The Commissioner verified that the documentation and details for this refund meet all requirements, and the replacement organization has properly filed. This action is pursuant to the provisions of Title 58.1, the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended. County attorney hereby notes his consent. Board of Supervisors will also need to act on the request for approval of a supplemental appropriation as indicated in the Commissioner's memorandum.
Questions of Mr. Riley? Hearing none. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I would move for approval of the refund and the supplemental appropriation.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Hess, discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, no. The refund and appropriation are approved.
The next request is a request from Auto Trademark of Winchester. County attorney is in receipt of the Commissioner's request dated October 27, 2014, to authorize the treasurer to refund Auto Trademark of Winchester the amount of $4,959.88 for adjustment to business license taxes for tax year 2014. This business opened and closed during 2014. This refund is a result of the company overestimating their gross receipts to what was actually received during their period of operation in the county. The Commissioner has verified that the documentation and details of this refund meet all requirements, and pursuant to Section 58.1 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended, County Attorney notes his consent. The Board of Supervisors will also need to act on the request for approval of a supplemental appropriation as indicated in the Commissioner's memorandum.
Questions of Mr. Riley? Hearing none. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval and supplemental appropriation.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Fisher. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
The last request, Mr. Chairman, is a request from Michael Smith Weber, and the county attorney is in receipt of the Commissioner's request dated October 27, 2014, to authorize the treasurer to refund Michael Smith Weber the amount of $3,542.16 for the adjustment to real estate taxes for tax years 11, 12, 13, and 14. This refund is a result of structural improvements removed from one site and replaced on another parcel. Supplemental bills were issued by the Commissioner. The Commissioner verified that the documentation and details for this refund meet all requirements. This is pursuant to the provisions of Section 58.1 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended. County attorney hereby notes his consent. Board of Supervisors will also need to act on the request for approval of a supplemental appropriation as indicated in the Commissioner's memorandum.
Questions of Mr. Riley? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the refund and the supplemental appropriation.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Lofton. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next agenda item is the Technology Committee. As soon as I get there. Who's going to handle the report? I'm on the wrong page yet. Mr. Lofton.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the Technology Committee met on Wednesday, November 5th, 2014, in the conference room of the county to discuss the upgrading of the video equipment that is currently being used to record and televise our board meetings and other meetings in the county. It was explained that the problems we're having with the equipment right now do not provide a good viewing for the citizens out there, and that this equipment is over 20 years old, obviously not on the cutting edge of technology. The money to be used to upgrade this equipment, if approved, is actually from what they call PEG funds, which are funds that we received through our franchise agreement with Comcast. The money's paid in to be used for items such as this for the county and cannot be used for other items within the county, can only be used for this purpose. So after much discussion and reviewing the equipment and the problems we were having with the equipment, the committee decided that it was a good use of the equipment, and they approved the upgrade to the boardroom audiovisual and broadcasting equipment in the amount of $178,122.95, and I would move that we approve that request.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I would second that, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Wells. Questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may add to that, I know there's a question about why there was only one bid for the replacement of the equipment, and I have checked and found out that the vendor is on the state contract, so that's why there's only one pricing on that equipment.
Other questions or discussion? Mr. Riley, where would one find these funds on the balance sheet? It might be a not fair question without preparation.
I'm not prepared to answer the question.
I would assume that they're there someplace unspent.
Yes, sir.
Let us know where that is.
I believe it's under the cable franchise agreement, but Mr. Tibbs may have the answer to that.
I know that they're earmarked, and I don't know if it's if it's a designated fund. I don't know if it is designated as the pay fund or cable franchise fund, but they are earmarked in a separate account, but it would require an appropriation by the board in order to access those funds. It's not something that gets appropriated as part of the budget process.
So the motion needs to be for approval and appropriation. Was that what you said?
Right, to appropriate the funds for this project from that particular line item.
Other discussion? Hearing none. Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Chair votes aye and the motion passes.
It's reserved fund balance. If I may, Mr. Chairman, it is in reserved fund balance, and it is designated.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next is the Finance Committee. It was a long agenda, and we spent very little money, so, you know, you've got a new bar to rise to. Is
Excellent, well done.
Would you like to do it? No, that's fine if you would do it for me.
I thank you. The Finance Committee met in the first floor conference room, North Kent Street, on Wednesday, October the 15th. There is one action item, and the EDA Executive Director requests an EDA fund creation and a general fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $375,000. This amount represents EDA incentives remaining in fiscal year 2014. The committee recommends approval, and I'd so move.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Second by Supervisor Lofton. Discussion. Hearing none. Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Chair votes aye and the motion passes.
Concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next is a public hearing and amendment to the 2014-2015 fiscal year budget. Mr. Riley, are you doing that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This is an amendment to the 14-15 fiscal year budget, and this is pursuant to Section 15.2, 2507 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended. The Board of Supervisors will hold a public hearing to amend the fiscal year budget to reflect a transportation improvement request for the Development Projects Fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $8,136,700 for the construction of Snowden Bridge Boulevard. The project will be funded through the Virginia Department of Transportation Revenue Sharing Program and matched by developer funds.
Questions of Mr. Riley? If there are none, we'll now conduct a public hearing. This is a public hearing for an amendment to the 2014-2015 fiscal year budget pursuant to Section 15.2-2507 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended. Board of Supervisors holds this public hearing to consider a Transportation Director request for development funds project Fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $8,136,700 for the construction of Snowden Bridge Boulevard. Project will be funded through Virginia Transportation Revenue Sharing and Matcher Developing Funds. Is there anyone here who would like to speak either for or against this budget amendment? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move for approval.
We have a motion by Supervisor DeHaven to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Fisher. Any discussion? Hearing none, Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Chair votes aye and the motion passes. Next is a Planning Commission public hearing rezoning 04-14. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to rezone 3 parcels of land that total about 8.5 acres from the MH1, which is the Mobile Home Community District, and the RA Rural Areas District, to the RA Rural Areas District. Now, these properties are located on Sinking Springs Lane in Gore in the Back Creek Magisterial District. Now, as you can see on the screen to your left, there's the locator map for the property. As you can see, the subject properties are outlined in black. And then you can see the split zoning. The purple section of the property is the area zoned mobile home community, and the remainder in the triangular area is the RA property. So the land uses proposed with this application are consistent with the county's comprehensive plan and does promote the county's rural area policies. This is a positive rezoning application as it does remove areas of mobile home community district that would not be typically used as that type of a use because it's located outside of the urban development area and the sewer water service area. The Planning Commission held a public hearing for this at their November 5th meeting, and they did recommend approval. So tonight we are seeking a decision from the Board of Supervisors on this requested rezoning application. I would be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Questions of staff? Is the applicant represented, or?
They're here if you have any questions for them.
There are no questions? Thank you. We'll now conduct a public hearing on rezoning 04-14 Baker and Lepley properties submitted by Louis and Melissa Baker, Fred and Alice Baker, and Christy Lepley to rezone 8.59 plus or minus acres from MH1 Mobile Home Community District and RA Rural Area District to RA Rural Area District. Properties are located on the Sinking Springs Lane in Gore. Properties are identified by property identification numbers 28-A-75, 28-A-76, and 28-A-82 in the Back Creek Magisterial District. Is there anyone who would like to speak either for or against this rezoning? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing. This is Back Creek.
Yes, sir. Seeing as how this is a positive rezoning, I would recommend the approval of the rezoning application 04-14.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Wells. Discussion. Hearing none. Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the rezoning is approved. Next is the Southern Frederick County Area Plan, which is a Planning Commission public hearing item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors. As you mentioned, this is the public hearing for the Southern Frederick Area Plan, and of course it's an amendment to the 2030 Comprehensive Plan. I'll take a little moment or two to go through a very brief presentation on the plan and also with some clarification that was provided through this effort. The plan itself, much like our other area plans, consists of 4 parts: urban areas and residential development, business development, transportation, and then natural resources, historic resources, and public facilities. In addition to the text that describes the Southern Frederick Area Plan, a series of 4 maps are used to illustrate the text of the plan. And of course, those 4 maps, urban areas, which includes residential development and business development, transportation, transportation with trails, natural resources, historic resources, and public facilities. Those 4 maps are the 4 maps which contain quite a bit of detail that are adopted with this amendment to the comprehensive plan. Those are in your agenda, of course, and they're highlighted here on the screen. The first one being the land use, the second one being the transportation, third one being transportation with trails, and the fourth one, the historic, natural resources, and community facilities. Again, the text of the plan and the 4 maps that I've just highlighted are what would be the amendment to the comprehensive plan. Now, during earlier discussions with the Board of Supervisors, and certainly prior to the Planning Commission moving forward with it, some additional illustration and clarification was requested that provided a close-up, if you will, of a couple of the changed areas, what was different from before to where we are today. So what staff had done is provided the following for clarification purposes. Of course, that was sent out prior to the Planning Commission public hearing to the Planning Commission and Board, and it's also been available on the county's website. So in addition to showing the 2 main areas that have changed, what staff tried to do was look at those areas from just a residential perspective and illustrate the residential areas, and then also illustrate the commercial and industrial areas. And on those close-ups, we provided just a small legend which took out all of the other land use legends to hopefully provide some additional clarity that was requested. And again, this is just for illustration purposes at this time. So first off, and for the benefit of anybody who may be interested, we provided a map showing a close-up of the 2 main areas of change. This, of course, this area plan builds upon the Route 277 plan that was approved back in 2008. So the first area that has changed a little bit from that original map is up in the Lakeside and Tasker Road area, and I'll go into that shortly. The second area is the White Oak Road and the Lake Frederick Northern Entrance area. So what we tried to do was highlight those 2 areas, because those are really just the 2 areas that have changed more than anything else. So with that, we can provide a before and after, if you will, of the first area, which is Lakeside and Tasker. And as I do this, I'll kind of move the screen around here a little bit, and hopefully we can follow along. The first area, of course, the Lakeside Tasker, is currently residential throughout. So you can see that reflected on the current land use plan. As a result of the proposed changes, then we can see that within that area, there are 3 general kind of focal points that have been identified. The first one being in and around Lakeside Bowman Library, the second one being at the intersection of Warrior and Tasker Road, and the third one being at the Villages at R-Trip. So hopefully that gives you some clarity on the changes in that area. Now, as we move a little further to the east and get to the White Oak Road, Lake Frederick location, I want to point out, if I can, the purple, the dark purple to the bottom, of course, is Lake Frederick, and the northern entrance is where Route 277, Fairfax Pike, and the Southern Frederick Parkway come together. It's in this area that the changes have occurred, just some minor changes. As you can see at that northern location, it's a center of commercial, industrial, transitioning into the residential, with some industrial immediately to the west of the Lake Frederick community. So taking this current land use and then illustrating the very same area, if I can, and showing that at this northern entrance to the Lake Frederick community, a small area of residential and commercial mix has been added in this general location, but predominantly it still remains industrial, commercial, with a mix of office and commercial uses. So hopefully that's helpful in illustrating those 2 main areas of change and the changes that have occurred. What we did also was pull out the residential and commercial land uses in those areas, so very, very briefly to look at that. And of course, we still recognize that the Lakeside Tasker area is predominantly residential, and you can see that reflected on the screen to your left. From a commercial side of it, we've introduced 3 areas that I highlighted before, and those are shown on the screen there. And as we move back out to the White Oak Road, Lake Frederick, the eastern part of the study area, you can see that the residential component is very limited, and it just revolves around Lake Frederick and that northern entrance. And finally, this is the illustration of the commercial, industrial land use designations to reaffirm, hopefully, that area, while there have been some minor changes in that location, it remains predominantly commercial and industrial in character. So with that clarification and hopefully illustration of the changes, We go back to ultimately what is the land use plan for the Southern Frederick area plan and show that that is what it is, and that's part of the plan that is being amended here this evening, and that's what's on the screen to your left right now. There's some public participation throughout this study effort, and it's taken a steady pace, if you will, over the past numerous months, including introduction meetings, working group meetings of individuals, business owners from the community participating in it, facilitator group putting the plan together, public review and input meetings and presentations to folks such as down at Lake Frederick. So the public participation has been steady and certainly been included with this study effort. Again, the Route 277 plan that's on the screen to your left is the one that is currently in the comprehensive plan, and ultimately we're looking to replace that with the one that's on the screen to your left. Again, the updated Southern Frederick area plan. The Comprehensive Plans and Programs Committee discussed this and endorsed it in September, and the Planning Commission recommended approval at their October the 1st meeting following a public hearing. So following a public hearing this evening, we'll be seeking the board's adoption, hopefully, of the Southern Frederick area plan. I'd be happy to answer any questions and clarify anything further that the board may desire this time.
Questions? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
We'll now conduct a public hearing on the Southern Frederick Area Plan. Plan encompasses the area generally east of Interstate 81 to the Clark County line and from the Apecan Creek in the north to Lake Frederick in the south. The plan contains 4 maps and a narrative text that covers the following areas: urban areas and residential development, business development, transportation and natural resources, historic resources, and public facilities. It is an update to Appendix I of the 2030 Comprehensive Plan and the Eastern Frederick County Long Range Land Use Plan, a component of the 2030 Comprehensive Plan. This plan represents the work of a large number of citizen volunteers who have been working over the past several months in collaboration with each other. Is there anyone here who would like to speak either for or against the Southern Frederick Area Plan? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. It's a pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we adopt the Southern Frederick area plan as presented.
We have a motion by Supervisor Wells. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Fisher. Discussion. I have to say, Mr. Ruddy, that you did a fine job. You converted at least one vote tonight. Any other discussion?
I've been involved in several of the meetings with Mr. Ruddy and his group, and they've done an excellent job. A lot of public participation and ideas have been encompassed in this plan, and I think it's a good one.
Any other discussion? We're ready to vote. Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the Southern Frederick Area Plan is approved. Next is another Planning Commission public hearing, an ordinance amendment to the Frederick County Code, Chapter 165, zoning, Article 2, supplementary land use regulations, parking, buffers, and regulations for specific uses. Go ahead.
And thank you. This is a request to revise the zoning ordinance to include a zoning district buffer waiver that allows the Board of Supervisors to eliminate or modify the buffer if an adjoining land use is designated in the adoptive comprehensive plan for a use which would not require a buffer should it be zoned. Now, the waiver as drafted would require support from the adjacent property owner. It would have to be written and notarized. So this is just a graphic of what the waiver would allow. On the screen to your left, we have 2 adjoining properties. The property on your left, as an example, could be zoned M1 industrial, and the property on the right would be zoned RA, rural areas, with a primary use of residential. The ordinance currently requires a 100-foot category C between the 2 properties. So what the waiver would allow is a property owner could apply to the Board of Supervisors to waive that buffer because the adjoining property would eventually, at some point, have the same land use. They would have to get written authorization from the adjoining property in order to come before the board and request that waiver. So the Planning Commission held a public hearing for this at their September 10th meeting, and they recommended approval. So tonight we are seeking a decision from the board on this proposed ordinance amendment. I would be glad to answer any questions.
I probably have a question of council. If the board went yes on a waiver request, and then a waiver request came in that looked exactly like it and went no, is there grounds for legal?
As long as the board's decision's not arbitrary and capricious. I mean, it's really no different than a rezoning action. Each one is based on its own facts, and the board may have what reasons it has for taking its action. But two very similar rezonings could come in, and theoretically, the board could reach two different conclusions. It's the same with this.
Probably a good answer to a poor question. I appreciate it. Any other questions? Thank you. We'll now conduct a public hearing on an ordinance amendment to the Frederick County Code, Chapter 165 zoning, Article 2, supplementary use regulations, parking, buffers, and regulations for specific uses, Part 203, buffers and landscaping, Section 165-203-02, buffer and screening requirements, revisions to the Frederick County zoning ordinance to allow for a zoning district buffer waiver when the planned land use shown in the comprehensive plan is compatible. Is there anyone here who would like to speak either for or against this ordinance amendment? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve as written.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Hess. Discussion. Hearing none. Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the revision is approved. Next is another Planning Commission public hearing, ordinance amendment, Frederick County Code 165 zoning, Article 2, supplementary use regulations, parking and buffers.
And thank you. This is a request also to revise the zoning ordinance to modify the screening requirements for outdoor storage areas. Now, the current ordinance requires that all outdoor storage areas be completely screened from the view of roads and surrounding properties by a fence, wall, mound, or some type of landscape screening. Now, what we've prepared is an ordinance that would eliminate the screening element when an outdoor storage area adjoins a property also utilized for an outdoor storage area, so that the screening is not required between their common property lines. There's also some other minor amendments that include surface material specifications for the storage yards and landscaping exemptions. So this is, again, another one of my details. You have two properties, both with a outdoor storage use. In the green, you can see the area that would be required to be screened, and that area in the red would be the area that would be eliminated if this ordinance amendment was approved. So the Planning Commission again held a public hearing at their September 10th meeting, and they recommended approval. So, and we are seeking a decision from the Board of Supervisors on this proposed amendment. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions of staff?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Fisher.
what would, in the event, it's stated here in a particular scenario where the property was converted on a use, what would the trigger be for that to change? In other words, if one use were to change?
If one property was outdoor storage and the adjacent property changed to a different use, there is no trigger for anyone to reinstall a buffer, simply because the new owner would be coming into a situation where the buffer didn't exist already.
So it'd be getting what he saw, so
Exactly.
to speak. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you. We'll now conduct a public hearing on an ordinance amendment to the Frederick County Code, Chapter 165 zoning, Article 2, supplementary use regulations, parking, buffers, and regulations for specific uses, Part 201- supplementary use regulations, Section 165-201.10, outdoor storage and processing, revisions to the Frederick County zoning ordinance to revise the outdoor storage screening requirements. Is there anyone here who would like to speak either for or against this ordinance amendment? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the amendment to the ordinance.
We have a motion by Supervisor Hess to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Collins. Discussion. Hearing none. Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor DeHaven.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Collins.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the ordinance amendment is approved. Next is another planning item, non-public hearing, memorandum and resolution on revenue sharing application. Mr. Ruddy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Mr. Bishop is requesting the board's support, and the resolution for support is included in your agenda for this year's 2015-2016 VDOT revenue sharing program. This resolution of support includes 3 projects, and I'll highlight them briefly, and they're also being shown by a map on the screen to your left. The first one being Coverstone Drive. Coverstone Drive would be a 4-lane section, and from its existing location by the Public Safety Building, in this general location, out to Route 50, directly adjacent from Inverleigh Drive. That's the first project, the first priority. The second project is Valley Mill Road and the relocation of Valley Mill Road through the Overlook project. Again, from Valley Mill Road at its existing location through the Overlook project to a new intersection on Route 7. The third project is Haggerty Boulevard from its future intersection on Route 7 back to the entrance, if you will, to what was formerly known as the Haggerty project, Beacon Heights being the project itself. So those are the 3 revenue sharing requests that were endorsed by the Transportation Committee. The request itself totals $10 million, $5 million for the first project, priority number 1, 2.6 for the second project, and the 2.4 remaining for the final third project. Again, Mr. Bishop's looking for a resolution of support from the board here this evening, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you.
Some point of clarification for some folks, the use of the words realign and relocate. That's what the roads are doing, but that approval process has already happened. This is just a funding mechanism for things already approved.
Yes,
But
sir.
some people thought we were making a change to what had already been approved.
Yeah, thank you. Indeed, this is for exactly that. These are existing road segments. In each of these situations, they're from road projects or road improvements that have been proffered on a generalized development plan for each of the projects, be that Governor's Hill, the Overlook, or the Haggerty Boulevard. Again, the locations of the roads are in exactly the same location what has previously been approved.
Any other questions of staff? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we are being requested to approve the memorandum and resolution on the revenue sharing application. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move for approval of the applications and the resolution of support for the 2015-2016 VDOT revenue sharing application cycle.
Motion by Supervisor DeHaven to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Fisher. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Memorandum and resolution are approved. Board liaison reports. Are there any?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor
Yes.
Lofton.
Extension Leadership Council met in October to review some of the projects that are ongoing and some that are proposed for 2015. And I would recommend that all our citizens, if you have not looked at the programs they offer, they certainly should look at that because there's a lot of useful information that can be gained. But one important thing that came out of that was that a Frederick County Board of Supervisors, previous Frederick County Board of Supervisors member, Mrs. Margaret Brum, was recognized as Volunteer of the Month. And those who know Margaret know that she has put a lot of time and effort. That is her passion, extension leadership. And I just wanted to recognize Margaret for her feat of being a Volunteer of the Month. And that is as a statewide program. So I would like to recognize Margaret and say thank you very much for your time and effort in that role.
I kind of think that might deserve of a motion that gets second, and Mr. Rowley draft a little something up to her.
I would certainly make that motion.
All right, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Supervisor Hess. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Mr. Riley, is that doable?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all I have.
Any other liaison reports? Citizen comments. This is the portion of the meeting the board sets aside for citizens to address the board on any topic. Is there anyone here who would like to do so? Seeing no one, we'll close the citizen comment portion of the meeting. Board of Supervisors comments. Are there any?
Mr. Chairman, I have two items
Yes.
I'd like to mention. First, on Saturday, the Parks and Rec Department sponsored the first annual, hopefully annual, Batterfield Half Marathon. I had the privilege of being there at the start of the race. Needless to say, I did not run. I know they had hoped to get at least 300 entries. They received almost 1,000 entries. They had almost 200 volunteers conducting the race. My observations were that the race was extremely well organized, extremely well run. They received a lot of positive feedback and comments. The other item I wanted to mention is that last Friday, the Frederick County Service Learning Government students presented the 7th annual Heroes Now and Forever breakfast to honor veterans in the county. And I had the privilege to attend both as a member of the board and as a veteran of the conflict in Vietnam. I just wanted to say it was a spectacular event, extremely moving. All started out with a light breakfast, and the placemats at each setting were flags that were done by elementary students throughout the county. And the other particular thing I wanted to mention, when the program in the auditorium ended and those of us veterans left the school, directly across the street from Millbrook, the students from Red Bud Elementary School were lined up in the schoolyard chanting USA, USA, and it was quite moving.
Any other supervisor comments?
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
We have a second by Supervisor Fisher. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Meeting adjourned.
You are watching the Frederick County Government Information Channel.